It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am Rob, and I am here for another State of the Dungeon address. This one for the game that took place on January 27th, 2022. The game, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and the Adventure Path of Dragon Heist. We'll call this one Homecoming, because it was fun. First of all, the group, having successfully recovered Floon for the infamous, quite famous, Volothamkedar. However, he had to welch on his payment because he didn't have the coin to pay them. So, in its place, he gave them a deed to property. A really nice piece of property in the North Ward of Waterdeep. Yeah, Waterdeep. They have property in Waterdeep. That's pretty important, and it's not just a tiny little shack either. This is a big house that at one point was a tavern. The only problem is it might be a little bit haunted, maybe be something of a money pit, but it's a house in Waterdeep that they have. So, the group was basically left to their own devices. They had rested. And of course, with rest comes a few revelations. For instance, Loxor was, again, kind of talked to by somebody who he kind of owes a few favors to. And, that worked out pretty well. And of course, there was a spell book up in the air because they had conquered a wizard in the prior session, and of course Aldrich was very interested in that. Now again, because this campaign is relatively new, I would like to reintroduce my characters. We have Zarya. She is a human barbarian, and she kicks all sorts of butt when the dice are working her way. She has the soul of a poet and a barbarian's rage and battle axe, or great axe. We have Eldrick, who is a noble scion of an elven house. He is, of course, a wizard, a practitioner of the arts, although he is still relatively young in his training. But he's looking forward to getting more advanced, and he brings the wisdom of the ancient race of elves to the group, and also a fair amount of magical flair. We also have, of course, Jazor, who is a dragonborn paladin, silver ancestry, dragonborn paladin, and he worships Selune, the goddess of the moon, who is kind of all about protection and freedom. And he's not yet chosen a path to follow for that, but he means very well. So we then have Loxor. Loxor is a tabaxi, and although he doesn't wear it on his sleeve so much, he is a warlock. Hexblade, having some, interesting ambitions. And then we have Felix, who is also a tabaxi, but he's a ranger, and he is all about keeping an eye on everything and never being caught by surprise and always being ready for any situation. Is pretty much his driving goal, it seems. So, as the group wakes up, of course, again, Aldrich had been going at that spell book all night. They come to, and they wake up and decide, hey, we've all got things we want to do. So let's do those things, meet up at noon, and we'll go and investigate the new house that we just got. So they do. All of them take their turns to go off and get, first of all, arrange for training, because they all hit the milestone where they can be second level. So Zarya went off to go talk to the guards, and the guard said, yeah, we'll train you. You're just going to have to train with the recruits, which will help us. We won't have to ourselves train the recruits. We can let you do a lot of the work. Okay, that's fine. As far as Felix, he went off to go and talk to the rangers and scouts who patrol the roads around Waterdeep, who are decently paid, but they're very few, unfortunately. It's not a lot of people who can go down that path. And not all of them are actual rangers in the same sense that an adventurer is. Many of them aren't, much more advanced than veteran warriors who just have a knack for the wilderness. But, of course, there are some that are properly trained rangers, and when it was revealed that, well, Felix wanted some training, they were all too happy to do so. Of course, he'll have to pay a little bit for their services and the time of the people who will train him, but it's not an overwhelming burden, and he's just basically kind of going to owe a little bit of debt of gratitude to help out, possibly, if the guard really need him for something. Especially, it's not bad to have the favor of a powerful ranger on your side if you have a mission deep into the wilderness. At the very least, it'll set off a group well who has to go into the wilderness if they have a ranger on their side. So, that's all good. Of course, it wasn't very hard for Jazor to go and get training because, of course, the people of Selune will love to have another paladin around. The problem is he was warned by his ally in the temple that the paladins are very, very competitive. They all, the experienced ones, have all sworn an oath, and they take that very, very seriously. So they want to try to encourage, rather aggressively, anybody they train to follow the same path they did and take the same oath. However, he kind of wimped out and said, he was offered one who wasn't judgmental and wasn't going to push him, but he's very old. He's pushing 80 as a human. His name is Grayson. And okay, he'll take him. The path of least resistance. Yeah. So he's got his training arranged too, and not a lot for the cost. Although, again, just like Felix, it's about to take on the ability to cast spells. So there's a bit that's involved there. Aldrich, of course, went to his contacts in the guild he belongs to as a mage, and he was told that it was going to be a little complicated getting him a trainer because he wants to become a blade singer, which means you need an elven teacher, and an elven teacher who's skilled in the blade song, and that's not incredibly common. Not to the point it's going to be a major hindrance, it's just going to be a little more expensive and take a little bit of time to get a trainer for him. But it won't be an undue burden that the rest of the group won't, So, the last, of course, was Loxor, and Loxor, well, his issue is that his practice is somewhat unsavory, and his contact is very unsavory, to the point that I think the player was actually scared of what he had gotten into. Oh, you're going to be a warlock but not have any consequence? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that happens. He met the trainer. The trainer is a sick individual, but then again, warlocks rub shoulders with some interesting people. So, and at this point, Loxor does not know who his patron is, specifically. All he knows is that it is an infernal agent. Its powers kind of radiate whenever he invokes them, so there's no hiding it, really. When he fires his Eldritch Blast, it's a blast of infernal black flame. When he uses his Hexblade hexing ability, he summons a pentagram in the air, curses a foe, and then springs out to attack. It's right there. But, assuming he'll have the wisdom to use that in its right time and place. We'll see. But they all got their training arranged. Everything was good. Some of them had some other shopping to do, trying to sell some things, trying to buy some things. And eventually a number of them had the same idea that Troll Skull Alley, where the manor house that we just got is, actually has some of the shops that might have services we need. Might not be a bad idea to meet the neighbors, right? There's a potent smith there. There's a bookseller there. There's an alchemist there. There's all kinds of good things. So they went there. And they started meeting the neighbors. First of all, they got their first sight of the house. And it was, they weren't overwhelmingly thrilled. It's a fixer-upper. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, it is a grand stately house that is clearly worth quite a bit, and a nice big lot, 2-acre lot. Then they went around to do their shopping. They met a couple of their neighbors, some nice folks. There's some Smiths they met. A fire genocide and a water genocide, who are a married couple. They're a couple of lads who have decided to go through life together. They're very happy. Although the fire genocide is a lusty guy who understands that, we deal with metal. A lot of metal is going to be used for weapons, and that's kind of what we're going to end up making a lot of. And his partner is a cleric of peace. They have to reconcile that a bit, but they're really good at making weapons. I mean, the ability to pour their own magics into the craft is a pretty big advantage. So they talked and ordered up a few things, some armor, a couple of weapons, and, it looks like everything's going well. Few notes of the things going around. They also met the alchemist, who has the shop, Coralyn's Crown, and turns out that she's an elf. She's very much into herbalism, and the opportunity was to sell a part of the gazer that they killed, a gland that she could use, and she bought it for a little bit of money, nothing much. Turned out Loxor isn't very good at preserving things like that right now, so he got a little coin and was sent on his way. However, he put himself up as the owner of Trollskull Manor, and she told him that, on no uncertain terms, she wasn't real happy with the upkeep of the place, and he'd better fix it soon. More problems for a young group, right? Yeah. So now, it's time for the group to go and investigate. And wouldn't you know it, they have the deed, but they have no key. There are several doors into the place. Some of them are locked because the doors have locked, and some of them are locked because somebody put a hinge and a padlock and fastened it to the building. So they went around and Loxor picked a lock to get them in. And they went in the front door. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And immediately they find out that, first of all, Loxor accidentally broke a step in one of the other doors, just because the place is kind of falling apart a little bit. And when he goes inside, they go inside this place, he picks the lock, they open it up, and they see written in the dust in front of them something like "Die Thieves." For people who would pick the lock to get in. Fair enough. They saw that they were in the tap room of the tavern, as the place had originally, or had previously been used as. Actually not a bad bar, all things considered, a pretty decent-sized drinking space. It's not going to go up against the Yawning Portal as far as the number of patrons, but it might be a nice, quiet, they could do with it what they want. They could turn it into a seedy establishment. Probably not in the quarters they're in. The neighborhood is kind of upper middle class. So they could draw from the upper class if they wanted to, really invest in some high-quality things and put their prices up at a point where, the upper class would be attracted to it because it would keep out the lessers. Or they could have it as a nice family establishment. Who knows what they're going to do? I don't even know what they're going to do, and I'm the game master. So, but they were going over all of this stuff. They discovered the cellar. And the cellar was interesting because, first of all, they found out that, there's an undead presence in the place. That's because Jazor used his divine senses, and there's an undead presence. They went down to the wine cellar and found one bottle of wine. When Luxor reached for it, a hand reached out and grabbed him and tried pulling him inside the rack of wine. That would not have ended well. Jazor pulled him free, and they both popped out like a cork and slammed into the wall, and were covered in ruined wine, basically vinegar. But the stuff that splashed around them, when they turned around and looked at the wall, it perfectly spelled out closing time. Yes, this is a ghost with a sense of humor, and doesn't particularly like them at this venture. For some reason. They explored the entire first floor, and then they went up. They noticed that this ghost attempted to avoid them as they were going around. It didn't look like it was confrontational, it just looked like it was kind of observing them. So it was careful to keep a floor between them and itself after a few minor japes. So the group explored the place, and it is a relatively nice place. Most of the rooms are decent size, 15 by 20. Some of them are laid out, taking advantage of the nice little tower section that's built into it. There are fireplaces smartly placed through, so all the living quarters have heat in the winter, as, of course, people practically live in their homes during the winter. Waterdeep itself basically locks down through the winter because nobody really travels then. So it is a pretty darn nice place, especially for something they got for free, a reward that they got. Although, again, to fix it up so that it's comfortable to live in will be rather expensive. If they want to fix it up so that it's extravagant to live in, that's going to be very expensive. Right now, they're looking at, we want to make it so it's livable, which isn't very expensive. The place was actually made very smartly, as I said. The heating is laid out well. It was an inn, so it could accommodate lots of people, but also it could very comfortably accommodate a party of adventurers, and they could have a first floor to leave as a tavern if they want to. After all, that would expand their influence and their contacts throughout the city. They could do a lot of things. Who knows? They could turn into a guild house if they wanted to. There's a lot they could do. Right now, they're all staking out places to live, so it's pretty clear they want the upper floors for themselves. And again, it's a four-story building. The upper attic has a beautiful sweeping view of the streets around. There are balconies out on the second and third floors so they can look out at the surrounding area, and they have a decent bit of space around the manor for grounds that they can develop if they'd like, and is highly recommended by the nice elven lady in Corallin's Crown that they do so. By the time they got up to the top, they heard somebody scampering out. They hadn't checked the privies, and somebody had been hiding in there. However, the two tabaxi immediately thought, toy, and they pounced. At the same time, with comical results. The stairs are only 5 feet wide. They both slam into it and fall down the stairs. If you've ever seen the Wet Bandits from Home Alone, it would look like that. It would as they crash to the bottom of the stairs together. Hilarious. The boy gained some ground, but then, for whatever reason, Loxor had his legs locked together or something, couldn't get up, but Felix went and pounced on him like Hobbes on Calvin when he comes home from school. Just, and he got the boy. The boy that he caught is an 8-year-old urchin named Pip. Pip is somewhat streetwise, enough to the point where he wasn't absolutely, a complete basket case upon being caught. He'd been caught before. And even though Felix is terrifying with his tiger stripes and his exotic look, and he is armed and armored, the boy was able to talk and converse without completely going into panic. Although he was scared, clearly. Another fun misdirect, when Loxor came over, he decided he was going to cast Charm Person on the boy. Diplomacy at its finest. And to be fair, the only spell that he had really seen Loxor cast, as far as Felix went, was his Burning Hands. So if he thought he was going to burn the child to death, he quickly scooped the boy up and tried to protect him. Didn't work. Loxor is actually quite good at the arcane stuff. So he cast the Charm Person at the boy. The boy seemed willing to work with them. I mean, they promised him food, and he hadn't had a lot of that, so he was amenable to, work with them. And then the rest of the group came down. They see this poor little ragged urchin boy, and they're all immediately, hey, you want to stay here? You've been living here kind of as a squatter, but if you want to stay here, we'll feed you, we'll clothe you, or we'll only ask you to do a little bit of work, nothing too serious. And yeah, you can stay here for as long as you want. So they adopted a boy. All they know about him is that he's streetwise, he's pretty smart, and he's got pretty good composure under fire. And they probably also suspect he's rather dexterous. So right now he's pretty well apportioned for an 8-year-old boy, if he is 8-year-olds, but yeah, he looks 8. So he agreed. So now they have Pip, and Pip is a nice little lad. Apparently, Zarya has adopted him primarily. She went to take and get him some suits of clothes after they'd finished looking through the house, which he got some nice clothes, didn't set her back too much because there's effectively a thrift shop nearby. The area they're in is upper middle class, so, you know, people have leftover clothes that they give out to the poor, and there are some shops that I would imagine handle things very similarly to what we understand as thrift stores. So, yeah, there is a thrift store not very far off from Troll Skull Alley. So they got him some nice clothes, and actually 2 boots. He was so happy, 2 boots. And they got him a coat and everything, because even though it was the beginning of spring, it was still pretty cold, and he was wearing like 3 separate tunics, just trying to stay warm. But at least Troll Skull Manor did keep the wind off of him and the snow off of him, so he was okay. So they squared that away, and then everybody went off to take care of a few other things. To be honest, it is my hope that several of the players start thinking about things their characters might have an interest in besides their one bond or their one passion and whatever the mission is. People are complex. They often have different things they want to do. Very few people will just sit in a room and wait for hours. Almost everybody has something to do. So, you know, I hope my players think more about what their characters would do if they had idle time, because it is in the nature of sentient creatures to want to entertain themselves or better themselves. Just saying. They met one of their neighbors. A gold dragonborn owns a shop, the Bookworm's Treasure, and he himself is a mage, but he came with a cake that he had whipped up when he heard Troll Skull Manor was under new ownership. And they met. He seems to be quite affable and quite intelligent, and he and Aldrich hit it off pretty well, quite honestly. Jazor said a few things that has him a little worried, that he might be a little bit of a deviant side of Paladin, but for the most part, nothing too terrible. He is very relieved when it sounds like they're going to stay and they're going to actually try to make Troll Skull work again. He gave them one cryptic warning as he left, though. He's like, he knew something about the ghost that was residing in the manor. And he says the person who was there was a bartender, and he was very passionate about being a bartender and making sure that it survived, to the point where, you know, he borrowed to keep it in business during lean times. And he died under suspicious circumstances. They found him with a broken neck in the cellar. It could be that you might be able to get him on your side if you make it clear that you want to keep the place as a tavern. If you don't, you'll probably have to destroy him. But if you do decide to keep at least the lower part of the establishment as a cellar, as a tavern, as it is appointed for, that might you might be able to work out an arrangement with him. So, something to think about. And then he left. And then they were again met by the furniture maker, also in Troll Skull Manor, just 1 or 2 buildings down. He is a buff half-elf. And he immediately came in and, well, he welcomed them in the neighborhood in his own bluff way. But, you know, he's a craftsman more so than a diplomat, so he offered up his services, explaining that he was basically tipped off because the the bookstore owner is a terrible social butterfly and informs everybody on the street that the place was occupied again. And probably gave a tip off that, well, he was seen with a cake coming to the manor. So that probably tipped the others off that, yeah, they're there now. So he basically went around and he said, I can help you refurbish this house. I can help you get good furniture in, and I can get you in touch with the guildsman who's in charge of carpenters and the such to restore the place. At the very least, I can sell you the beds you're going to need, and if you want to turn this into a bar, I can sell you the bar furniture there. I can do master craftsmanship, so if you want really fine, we can do that. If you want something less, I can do that. I can basically arrange for everything that you need to put this place back together again. So, the thing is, everybody comes over there expecting them as the new owners of this place to... They're poor! These adventurers are dirt poor. As a group, they just got 150 gold from their friend Renair, who again feels indebted to them for having saved his life. He gave them that and gave a couple of magical items out to the group, birthday presents. I still do that. But they don't have a lot of spending cash, and they still don't have all the basic equipment they'd probably be happy with either. So when it comes to, again, a money pit, at the moment, they've got a tavern with no booze and no furniture and needing a drastic overhaul unless they want haunted house as their motif, which actually could work out in Waterdeep. Just a thought. But they got the wheels in motion. So the only thing that was really left was to go and talk to Volo and tell him that, yeah, they'll take it, and he was going to bring a magistrate so they could sign on the dotted line, and the place would be theirs. So, they were a little worried that he wouldn't show, which really would kind of put them in a bind. But after taking care of a few personal matters, they went off to the Yawning Portal, which again is halfway across town from Troll Skull, so they don't have to worry about the Yawning Portal being their competition, at least. There are a few taverns and inns nearby where their place is, but it's pretty ideally situated for a drinking place for, again, a neighborhood of folks who are still working class people, who are traders and skilled craftsmen, who generally tend to have a little bit more money and maybe be a bit thirsty in the evenings. So they could do quite well for the neighborhood they're in. So they get to the Yawning Portal. And of course Volo isn't there. So they go around and they talk up a little bit. There's a loud crowd above them in the balcony, but they go and they get a seat. And of course, Durnan knows Loxor. He's a kind of a contact of sorts. And they got some drinks. Nothing too difficult. The cleric of Joaquin, who they've already made the acquaintance of, came over again. And this time Loxor wanted to gamble with her. She's like, okay. And Loxor didn't lose everything he gambled. But on the other hand, he was pretty sure he had the edge with his marked cards. And that darn cleric of Joaquin still ended up getting more money out of him than he ended up taking off of her. So, it's just one of those things. Anyhow, they heard a little bit of the local scuttlebutt before, well, Volo came in. Volo came in with a magistrate, like he said he would. Okay. He comes gliding in and asks the group, are you satisfied? And they were. They realized the place is actually very valuable. Except for the ghost, but other than the haunting, it's a nice place. And it's the kind of thing that a group could really hang their hat on. Having a really nice base or a really, solid home in the middle of a city that is well patrolled with guards in a neighborhood that trouble doesn't really come to it that often. So they were pretty happy. And Volo was happy they were happy because, well, he didn't want an angry party of adventurers to be cross with him. And Volo doesn't like to have anybody cross with him, let's be honest. So he was more than happy to have the magistrate oversee them signing the deed. The magistrate was a fun guy. He's one of those people I just had all kinds of fun with. There were a couple. Loxor's contact is a lot of fun. I can get as creepy as I want, and it's great. But the magistrate was just a fun character. Just both sour and everything. Too much fun. But he left, and Volo decided it's time to party. So he made sure they had drinks coming in. Loxor tried gambling with him and actually beat him. Volo may not be the world's greatest gambler, but he didn't have the coin to pay on his debt again. So he ended up giving him a golden dagger that he had recovered from one of his trips. And, yeah, a dagger, the hilt at the very least, is made out of gold. So he was happy about that. So, yeah, Volo's not a very good businessman, as it turns out. But he is a pretty canny adventurer. They drank a little bit, and then... Oh, they were going to go back to Trollskull. And Volo kind of attached himself to the group. So they were walking across town. They went from, of course, down through the outskirts of the Dock Ward, skirting the Castle Ward, and moving up to the North Ward. That's a fair bout of foot travel at night through Waterdeep. Now, even sticking to the widest roads, the most well-lit, this is a city right now that is having a problem with an underground criminal organization war going on that they had already found out about, with the Xanathar Guild and the Zentarum at each other's throats. And they passed by a scene of such carnage where the city watch was again pile of dead bodies in the street because they'd been killing each other again. So they skirted that, and as they were getting to Trollskull, 3 men stepped out of the shadows and accosted them, saying they wanted the loud one, Volo. And the group's like, wait a minute, there's 5 of us and Volo here, and you got 3 guys. Now, they showed that they're wearing chainmail and they had short swords, so they were ready for a fight, but again, something didn't really add up. So they did what any sensible group would do. They charged and attacked, of course. Then comes cue the Benny Hill music, because Jazor, woof, rolls a 1, buries his greatsword between cobblestones. Zarya moves up, woof, with her big battle axe, after raging and everything, just woof. It was sad. Loxor, misses. Then they get shot at from behind by crossbows. Loxor takes one in the back. The others, there's a couple of that ping off of Jazor. And otherwise, yeah, I think actually Felix took one off of his armor as well. But they didn't have as much luck. They had even less luck when there were 4 crossbowmen. Aldrich turned around and sleep. Half of their number dropped. Thunk. Now, these guys aren't stupid. They live in a magical world, and they know what one of the most common wizard spells is: sleep. So they were determined to go over and shake their friends awake. But then the return fire started coming in. Felix got in a nasty shot. Absolutely brisketed one of them. Didn't kill him, but gravely injured him. And the others were receiving some fire too. This, considering also that the group was split. Zarya and Jazor had moved up to engage the 3 with the swords. And the whole time, Volo's going, don't fight! We can talk this out! There's no reason for bloodshed! No, there was going to be bloodshed. That's just how these things go. The 2 who were still upright for the archers, however, slapped their friends awake and dragged them back into the alley, out of the fight. The group didn't pursue, So they were able to turn and look at the other three, who just went down under withering fire. One of them, just the leader of the group, got just dropped from a combination of multiple attacks. A firebolt here, I think an arrow hit him from Felix, and yeah, the whole group got washed because Jazor turned and used his cold breath weapon to hit all three of them, hitting very well, by the way. Very accurate, and did not hit Zarya. Zarya ended up cleaning out one of them with her axe. It was messy. Great axe kills are usually going to be messy. And as there was one left, all of a sudden there was a sudden twang, and he was held stiff. And that was the time they heard a soft sss. And Volo walks up with his rapier, puts it under the man's chin, and says, "Now I think you're going to tell us what you know." Instead of being a buffoon, all of a sudden, he's cool, competent, held a guy with a single spell, and now he has him at his mercy to interrogate. Well, then the group decided they were going to do the interrogation. He let the hold spell slip. The mercenary, bravo, brigand, whatever, said he wouldn't tell them anything. Loxor tried to help Jazor, giving him advantage. Jazor wasn't the most intimidating person, and the guy told him, "You're a paladin of Selene. Your dirtiest is nothing." That's when Zarya decided she was going to use barbarian intimidation tactics, grabbing him someplace very tender and squeezing. However, even under this expertly applied interrogation, he still wasn't willing to tell them anything. So he's tied up, and that was pretty much where we ended it. It was a nice little dash of combat in the end. Some very nice little character exploration, going over some things, getting their feel for the characters and their place in the world a little bit. I think I'm going to like this little bit slower pace where they can actually deal with the world as real people, rather than constantly being acted in it like it's an action movie and they have to get to the next scene as fast as possible. We've done that before. This time I think I'm going to enjoy letting them develop their characters, have some fun growing out those characters' personalities and desires and wants, and hopefully they enjoy the ride as well. Because if they don't, they're going to get beaten. No, I'm just kidding. If they don't, they're not going to enjoy it as much. That's all I'm going to say. But there will be plenty of opportunity for them to not just conquer through combat, but to use their position and their abilities to benefit themselves, to seek out their inevitable enemies, to possibly enact positive change in the space around them, or to help out their friends. Who knows? It'll be very interesting, though, I think. And that's where we left off. So, if you thought this was great, because I certainly did, you'll stay tuned, and very soon we will have the next stage of Dragon Heist. That has been my State of the Dungeon address, however. Until next time, thank you. I am Rob, and I'll see you for the next one. Farewell.